So good morning, everyone. Once again, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Placemaking, the Essentials of Public Murals. And this is part one of a two-part series. Today we'll be covering the purpose and planning process of public murals. My name is Savannah Blance Maria. I'm the programs coordinator here at Connecticut Main Street Center. In a moment, I will introduce today's guest speakers, but first we have just a few words. Connecticut Main Street Center is the expert resource for developing and sustaining vibrant downtowns and main streets that fuel our state's prosperity. We are grateful to our sponsors and funding partners that make this work possible. Connecticut Main Street Center's founding sponsors are Eversource and the State of Connecticut's Department of Economic and Community Development. Additional funding comes from Webster Bank, Travelers, and Liberty Bank. We all know a great downtown when we're in it. It's a feeling and energy that we can sense, see, and experience, but it can be hard to articulate what exactly makes a main street great, so we've broken it down into 6 qualities that make it easier to grasp. At the foundation, there is a separate non-political entity that manages the Main Street or downtown district. There are multiple ways to get around via various modes of transportation. People from all walks of life and stages of life feel welcome and included. There are visible efforts to invest and preserve green and healthy spaces. The district supports an array of diverse economic development initiatives such as commercial and residential developments, as well as attracting and retaining small businesses. And lastly, something special and unique keeps residents and visitors coming back for more. And with that, I am very excited to introduce our guest speakers for today's webinar. Lauren Coakley-Vincent, President and CEO of the Bridgeport Downtown Special Services District. Jonathan Delgado, Deputy Director of the Office of Planning and Economic Development in the City of Bridgeport. John Pologrodnik, also known as JPO. He's an artist, muralist, art consultant, and he is currently an artist and advisor to the City of Bridgeport. Now with that, I'd like to kick it over to Kimberley Parsons-Whitaker from the Department of Economic and Community Development's Office of the Arts, who will help facilitate today's presentation and conversation.
Thanks, Savannah. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you again. So just a very brief introduction. The Connecticut Office of the Arts is really happy to partner with Connecticut Main Street Center on this webinar, The Essentials of Public Murals. Next slide, please. The Office of the Arts, our mission and a little bit about us, we were created as a standalone agency to be a state arts agency federal partner to the National Endowment for the Arts. We're funded with both state and federal dollars and must match all federal funding we receive with state dollars. Our mission at the Connecticut Office of the Arts is to animate a culture of creativity across Connecticut by supporting arts making and arts participation for all people. We have a small but mighty staff that administers arts access, arts education, support for artists and nonprofit organization, an arts in public places program, and community development programs. Next. In Connecticut, we are now well aware that arts and culture is a critical economic driver of vibrant communities. The arts and culture industry supports jobs, generates tax revenue, strengthens tourism and the visitor economy, contributes to community vibrancy, and helps to preserve authentic cultural experiences. Next slide, please. Arts and culture in Connecticut is a $12.8 billion industry. There are 54,000 plus jobs in the state's arts and culture industries, with a total compensation of $6 billion. On the qualitative side of things, arts and culture helps tell the story of Connecticut as a vibrant place to live, work, raise a family. Connecticut is a small state. Nearly everybody has access to local cultural activities. And Connecticut is a creative state. Historically, this creativity has formed the growth of industry here. Next slide. So this two-part webinar series on the essentials of public murals has been created in response to requests from Connecticut cultural districts and main streets across the state. Today's webinar will be focused on exploring the purpose, planning, and processes of a public mural program. Our three speakers will discuss working with property owners and artists, and we'll also examine how Bridgeport has funded their mural program. Next slide, please. So I'd like to start with Lauren Coakley-Vincent and the Colorful Bridgeport program. So Lauren, why don't you sort of walk us through why is Bridgeport investing in murals and how is Bridgeport's Downtown Special Services District playing a role?
Thanks, Kim, and thank you to the Connecticut Office of the Arts and Connecticut Main Street Center for giving us the opportunity to talk about the program and the impact it's had on the neighborhood. Saying good morning to everyone. Before I dive into the particulars of our strategy behind arts and culture, I'd love to just give a little reference point of what a Downtown Special Services District is and how we function and operate. So if you could go to the next slide, Savannah. Great. So this is a little overview of our services. We're the Bridgeport Downtown Special Services District. So I see a few colleagues from other DSSD and DSSD-like organizations across the state, but there are 13 DSSDs in Connecticut and many of the similar kind of organization in cities across the country and around the world. And we all essentially do the same things, even though we have our unique neighborhoods that we serve. So we focus on keeping the neighborhood clean. We have a team of ambassadors who keep the district looking beautiful 7 days a week. They focus on street cleaning, graffiti removal, beautification projects, plantings and such. And a number of other activities that make the district look its very best. We also contribute to public safety by collaborating closely with the police department around information sharing, as well as we have a safety ambassador several days a week who walks the district as more of an eyes on the street presence to make people feel safer in the neighborhood. And then our third area is probably our most expansive area is promoting the district. So through that, we are offering services for downtown businesses through our Colorful Bridgeport marketing platform, promoting individual businesses, events, and activities, and the cultural elements of what are happening in the neighborhood, sort of defining what our place is about. And that also includes offering events, supporting community events, as well as projects like the Colored In mural program. And for us, we can go to the next slide. That's coming up to talk about the Colored In program. Thank you. I joined the DSSD in 2018 and quickly realized the wealth of creative entrepreneurs that were living and working in Bridgeport. And it felt like the right fit for us to define sort of our, competitive advantage in relation to our sister cities and communities surrounding us. So, having a deep bench and a wealth of artists, we really began to focus on through Colorful Bridgeport and the kinds of initiatives we were supporting and promoting, the expansion of the creative sector in the neighborhood and across the city. But really, we're a downtown special services district, so we are required to focus on the boundaries of our service area. So everything we greedily brought everything into the downtown. And so I would say in 2019, when we painted the Peacock Alley walkway behind the Arcade Mall, was really sort of the beginning of our Color It In public art program. But with our incredible partnership with the City of Bridgeport's Economic Development Office, which we'll talk much more about in this webinar, we were able to really rapidly and exponentially expand the quantity of projects that we were able to undertake. But we really did want to stay grounded in the values and the purpose of what our public art program was attempting to accomplish. So we really, again, started from the place that we have an incredible creative sector in our community that is, as Kim just walked us through, a viable part of the local economy, and we should really invest in that and elevate that and draw attention to that and draw more participation in that. So public art is one way in which you can do that very visibly, and it also contributes to the feelings of safety and warmth and welcome in our neighborhood. So with our program, you'll see the goals articulated over here. Really, the bottom line was we wanted to create a positive impact on the community and drive people to the doors of our businesses, our cultural institutions, and so forth, to our community events and activities. So we will talk, I think, more towards the end of this webinar and in great detail in the second webinar about the impacts of the program. But I would just say we were very proud that we were able to support so many Bridgeport artists, provide them with an opportunity to put a piece of their artwork out in the world. And for the artists who were not local to this area, they were able to undertake projects that really spoke to the cultural history, the legacy of our community in a variety of different ways. And if you walk around the neighborhood, or if you join us for one of our walking tours, you'll get to learn all the ways in which every piece in the downtown has some kind of reference point to the city and the identity that we're trying to promote. So I'll take a quick pause there. And I think on the next slide, we'll see, so we'll see some high level impact points. But before I walk through those, I'll just play a quick overview to give you a sense of, it's a short video that'll give you a sense of the scope of the project, the feel of the energy that it infused into the community as the murals were being installed, and the legacy that it's leaving behind. So Savannah, do I have to do anything special, or do I just press play?
Let me just end my screen share, and then you should be able to go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. Sorry, is that showing? Are you seeing that?
I don't see it, Lauren.
Okay. Oh, this is why. Okay. Sorry. And here we go. Okay. Okay, so that's just a small sample. At the end, you'll notice Pivot Language Media's logo. As I said, it was really important for us to create opportunity and invest in the creative community here in Bridgeport. So Pivot Language Media is a local videographer and photographer who we've worked with on a number of projects. All of everything that Colorful Bridgeport has been made by local Bridgeport-based artists. And you can see behind me, if you see what's behind me in my Zoom screen, artwork by Liz Scalace, photographs by Gary from Pivot Language, illustrations by local graphic designers, etc. So again, it's kind of the mural program is placed within a strategic framework that made sense for us to grow our local economy and factored into the larger strategic approach that we had. You don't have to be that intentional or that, strategic about it. Art is beautiful. It will make your neighborhood feel wonderful. And John and Jonathan will say much more about that. But I just wanted to highlight a few things that this program was able to do for us. So we completed 32 projects, and that's actually thanks to John 2 more this year, so 34 projects that have been specifically in the DSSD immediate area. 25 of the original 32 were Bridgeport-based minority or women-owned business vendors. So that included our graphic designer, the videographer that I mentioned. So that's 83% of the people that were awarded some version of a contract through this program were local minority and women-owned businesses. Our goal was 50%, so we were thrilled to exceed that pretty significantly. And then for total dollar investment, it was $404,102, and that is just Bridgeport-based artists and vendors. That doesn't include the amount that Sherwin-Williams, and again, John and Jonathan will talk more about the mechanics of that, but that doesn't include the amount that went through Sherwin-Williams and United Rentals, which are local shops of larger companies. That's just artists and folks that helped us produce this program. So yeah, that's an overview of DSSD colored in, and I'll hand it back to Kim to take us to the next step.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much for that. It's great context for moving forward. So let's dig in a bit to the municipal process that has been so effective in Bridgeport. I know we have a number of people that had requested this webinar and that are on this webinar that work for municipalities. They're municipal economic development directors or planners or staff or associated with municipalities. So, and they were particularly interested in the survey that we did prior to planning this on breaking down just the process of developing an artist selection process, the government process that's used. So, Jonathan, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you give us a high-level look at the city's practices? How have you developed your artist selection process, and what can you tell us about the government processes that are used?
Hi, everyone. So I think for all the reasons that Lauren just mentioned, like the DSC was an obvious partner in kind of trying this out that first time, really focusing on the downtown. We learned early on that I think just the natural process for payment, contracting, and all that from the city side just wouldn't lend itself to the artist community between how long it takes in order to get payments out, how long it takes for our legal team to review each and every contract. And so it really recognized that having kind of a fiscal or fiduciary partner in the DSSD helped not only in the operations, but also gave us a real kind of intimate sense of the neighborhood and making sure that we're choosing the right artists, looking at the right places. And be able to do something that felt kind of holistic and complete. So the way that we structured the contract was kind of a master contract that was for the project management and general oversight that was connected to kind of a basket of funds that would be allotted to the various projects that we would end up contracting out. And so that allowed us to be nimble and flexible. So a lot of it ended up being kind of either upfront payments or kind of while we were working through, recognize kind of what projects were upcoming, then we can kind of get the money to Lauren. That would allow her to then operationalize it. I think that for us, we also learned that trying to provide supplies and machinery or equipment also proved difficult that first go around. And we realized that there's state contracts through, I think, the DAS service at the state. So we were able to opt into not only Sherwin-Williams, as Lauren mentioned, allowed us to get access to high quality paint and do blanket purchase orders. So we just kind of looked at what our general number was going to be for the season, and that allows us to just either have artists pick up what they needed or relay to John, the things that they would need and when, as opposed to individual purchase orders every time that we were kind of undertaking a project. And similarly with machinery, we were able to opt into a United Rental state contract that allowed us to pick up what we needed when we needed. and go about it that way. I think, um, when it came to pricing murals, we were also kind of going back and forth, both our purchasing department and legal, to figure out how we would work it, because anything over a certain City of Bridgeport's $25,000, we would have to do a formal bid. We recognized that wasn't going to allow us to be nimble, um, and would give us significant lead times with projects. So we were able to basically have the DSSD adopt our purchasing policy, which says that anything under $25,000 would allow to do what we call informal competitive proposal or quick bid. And that allowed us to try a couple different iterations of what it would look like to choose an artist. Um, that first go round was kind of a open-ended question. If you're interested in doing something in Bridgeport, that proved to be a little too unwieldy. The second go round, we looked at what it would mean to have kind of this informal process, but people would apply specifically to um, various project sites that were pre-selected. And that worked out, but at the same time, we ended up with a lot of heavy hitters or artists that were kind of known to be favorites getting too many walls. And we wanted to make sure that we're creating opportunity for local artists or people that we see as, kind of being at a point that they'd like to level up and they would need to be given specific opportunity to do so. And so this last time, what we did is instead we focused on kind of creating a request for expressions of interest. And that gives us a roster every year, and that people would apply, share their qualifications, let us know what they've done, where, scale of which that allowed us to then kind of create, and this is really more John's side of the house, an understanding of what would make sense for who, and then we would um, kind of identify opportunities that made sense based on the artist's history or um, their subject matter or their type of art. And that really allowed us to move in a way that we can help pair art through that still three selection basis, um, and then choose the best one with the property owners. So I think that's really
Great.
from the
Thank
governance
you.
side of
Thank you,
things.
Jonathan, very much. Let me quickly turn it then over to JPO, John Paul Ogrodnik. You are both an artist and an advisor to the City of Bridgeport. So this is an unusual gift, I think, for a municipality to have that. Tell us a bit about your role in curating public murals for the city.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Hello to everyone out there. Yeah, so I feel honored to be in the position I am as an artist to the core, but I also have a project managing background, so that kind of helped with the understanding of what it takes to get a project done, but also as an artist creatively, what you would run into on a given project. Um, so realistically, I would call it a gentle curating because, as Jonathan said, that we acquire a roster of artists to pull from, and then I would go through and just kind of see their past works. What we ask for is a few simple questions of like, show us past works. Do you have any lift experience? Have you ever painted a mural? If that is what you're trying to do, the sizes of the projects that you worked on in the past. Like you have to bring that all into to play when selecting a short list. So say we got 60 artists that submitted for a year. My job is to go through those, understand who would be a good lead artist for projects, who would be more of an assistant position, or what me and Jonathan Lauren like to call more of like a horizontal project where it's say a knee wall or something that doesn't need to be worked off of a lift or a tall ladder. something that's more accessible to somebody that's just getting started with their career. I think that that's important to have many different size projects and understand what it takes to get those done. I mean, we painted this wall that Savannah's showing right now is 120 feet, so 60 feet on both sides and about 26 feet tall, I believe. That's a massive project. Sonny came in and did one hell of a job on this project. He has a lot of experience with that. So yeah, I hope that answered some of your question. I might have gone off on a little bit of a tangent there.
And not a tangent at all. I think the audience is probably fascinated to learn about that sort of liaison position that you have, John. Can you give certain examples, maybe, just pluck out a couple of examples of how you've either worked with the property owners? Do they come to you? Do you go to them? How does that work?
Yeah, I think it's a good mix. Like me and Jonathan have driven throughout the city of Bridgeport scouting. We call it every off season we go through and we scout and say, hey, like here's a good spot for a mural. And then obviously we get emails from different organizations or different building owners, people that may not have heard about the project until very recently and reached out and said, hey, like we'd love to be a part of your project. This is the wall that we have to offer. What else do we need to do? And what we have them do is sign a letter of intent to make sure that, when we go through this process, they're committed to having this project done. That is an important part of our process for sure. So yeah, there's been a wide variety of ways we've acquired walls for our projects. Some on the like the organization side. If Savannah, if you want to go to the next slide, I believe it's the next one. Well, this is a local business. We'll go through this. Sound Coffee is expanding at a very nice rate. Michaela Vec is a CT local artist out of the Hartford area. She did an amazing job. And what we do is we sit down with the building owner or organization and understand what they want to see from this project that we're going to do. We ask for feedback, we ask for direction, a short list of key words. Like we've gone through all different types of processes. Some are like, we just want to see what the artist comes up with. And then others have given multiple paragraphs of direction, backstories of the area. So some people are very keyed into what they would want to see on their building. Sound Coffee want the history in different parts of the world of coffee. So that's what Michaela did for them. If you want to go to the next slide also, this one was done in partnership with Recovery Network, local organization, Chuck Barrett. The sun it's probably not the best shot, but that's all I had. But this is a massive wall. Chuck spent just about a month on this wall. And it's very well received, and it really brings a lot of life to that street and this organization. We're actually doing another one with Recovery Network this year that will be happening hopefully within the next few weeks. But yes, they were very happy with it and wanted to do another one with them. They have multiple locations in Bridgeport, so we want to help these organizations beautify their buildings. If you want to come to the next slide. And then we have our biggest project to date, I think still. Last year, we tackled the Hi-Ho towers. We worked with D'Addario and we actually split costs. So that is an option. Also, we split costs with them to, if you guys are familiar with this structure, it was in pretty rough shape with overgrowth all over it. And the paint was 30 years old on there. So what we did was we hired a local artist to actually refresh the paint after we paid for people to take all the greenery off of it, the ivy and all of the overgrowth off of it. We completely replenished the top part. And we had another artist come in and do his artwork, Brian Casper, on the lower half of the structure. So there is many different ways that we can work with building owners or organizations, and that's just a small example of the many projects that we've been able to get done over the past 4 years.
That's these images are amazing. It's just fantastic. So and Jonathan and John, I'll let you sort of volley back and forth or choose either one of you wants to answer this. So I know this topic has come up in various places where I've been before, where there is a mural on a wall of a privately owned property. And then the property may change hands at some point. The new property owner that comes in that may or may not care or may not be in favor of what's on there. So on the nuts and bolts of property owners that want a mural on the side of their building, or somewhere on their property, is there a commitment letter? Is there a sort of statute of limitations that's imposed? How do you work through that?
I think we haven't had that situation happen. But I think part of that goes back to the site selection too. Like I think a lot of the properties we worked with, and a lot of it with the help of Lauren, especially in the downtown, were owners that we know are here for the long term, and that kind of allowed us to feel comfortable working with them. There is an expectation, at least on the present owner, that they maintain it and are expected to keep it up for a minimum of I think it's 5 years. But yeah, we haven't dealt with that yet, and hopefully we won't have to anytime soon. But
If I may chime in just to add a little bit to that, we did think that through for the downtown projects. And just to for those of you who are in sort of boundary bound entities like we are, we have a very clearly defined service area. We were able to assist with projects that were just within sort of our boundaries, or whatever the city defined the boundaries of downtown to be. So there was a point at which it's been wonderful to see that to, staying in.
Lauren, you're cutting out
Staying
here.
in our lane and our space.
Oh,
Yes,
awesome.
is this
Thank
better?
you, sorry. If you could just repeat
Yes.
that last part that you just said.
Oh, sure. I was saying, as a matter of distinction, we stay within the boundaries of our service area, which is, the DSSD special taxing district. So we have good contacts with the property owners, regular contact with the property owners in our service area. And we had thought, and I should say, this project began as we were just starting to come out of the COVID pandemic, and there were a lot of transactions taking place. So we did plan ahead and sit property owners down, walk them through a training session of what the commitment they were making included, and gave them a template letter of commitment that said, similar to what the artist's contract said, this artwork is intended to be installed and in place for 5 years at the minimum. Maintenance requirements will, be on the person responsible, and so forth, so that there were no questions or surprises if something were to damage the artwork, or if, to your point, if the property were to change hands. So I think it's helpful to at least have a basic letter of commitment with the property owner. That way you can ensure at least that communication has taken place once you initiate the public art project.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. I know we're getting a lot of questions, and so I want to reserve as much time as we can before the end of the hour to start to address some of those. But before we do that, I want to make sure that we touch on costs and funding. And so the three of you jump in. But so 2 questions that I have for you. What should we know about the typical costs of a mural, both the visible and the invisible? And then if you each want to sort of take, anybody who wants to jump in on that, great. But then the follow-up question is going to be on funding sources. And so maybe Jonathan, you can talk a little bit about what Bridgeport has done specifically to secure funding for your public art program. But let's talk about the typical costs.
The typical costs are, the artist stipend we're keeping separate from the other costs such as lift rentals and supplies, as I believe Jonathan mentioned earlier. So it's just a sliding scale as far as that goes. Say the project is $25,000. You're estimating somewhere in that range. A project that size, a lift is probably going to be used for about a month max. I don't think we've had any projects go over that period of time. And then the materials you're going to average, and the lift rental, that's a sliding scale also. So say a $25,000 project, we're estimating probably going to take around 30,000 all in. So that's a pretty good estimate to follow. And then Jonathan, if you want to take the side of where that kind of comes from.
Yeah, and I'll just add again, kind of what I mentioned before about, for at least the city of Bridgeport, we backed into our purchasing policy, and that ended up being the framework by which that we kind of came up with a schema and a way to create some predictability in kind of the cost of the different projects. Funding for us, there was a series of some taxable bonding that was done in 2014 and then again in 2017 that was focused on this kind of public-private partnership that in its general bond description very explicitly called out wayfinding as well as murals and other artistic installations because it was part of a larger package that was really focused on the revitalization of the downtown. So we were obviously very lucky to have had that, and that was in place well before I got here, and that kind of started off as a seed funding for the downtown projects. As we've expanded and now working outside of the downtown, a lot of the projects have been funded through whether it's a combination of ARPA and then other kind of neighborhood-centric capital that we've earmarked for, more public art installations. And going forward, because at some point these funding sources will run out, the conversation's been about really trying to capture cannabis revenue. The city of Bridgeport has, I think, 4 operating right now, and a few others that are on the horizon. And the expectation is that that revenue pool will grow. And one of the things that the statute recognizes is neighborhood developments and other type of civic activities throughout the city can be funded with cannabis. And so the intention is to find a way to earmark it to be able to continue the program because based on the feedback we've received, we know that it's expected this program's here to stay, and that's our goal. I think in a cash-strapped city like Bridgeport, it's not something, had it not been for capital that already existed, I can understand why it wouldn't be a priority to go with kind of more capital in the future. So finding this in cannabis, hopefully be an unexpected revenue source coming from general operating is exciting because we know that there'll be more flexibility there and more of an appetite to use that type of funding going forward.
Well, great. Thank you, Jonathan. Um, Tell me a little bit about, before I turn this over to the audience, tell me a little bit about prep of a site versus once the paint goes on, is the crude way to put it. But and I'm sure that part of the answer to that is it depends on the condition of the wall, depends on the condition of the building. But how do you approach that? First of all, is the artist responsible for prep cleanup beforehand, or again, does that depend?
We started off that I think the first year before I was actually involved, I think you guys hired a company to come and pressure wash all the walls and then prime the walls. We've been building a system every year. We've been kind of refining our system more and more, and obviously refining the walls that we're picking that don't need as much work done to them. But in the case that they do need work, yes, we've even bought an in-house pressure washer and an industrial paint sprayer for priming purposes of the walls. So, I mean, I've been out there priming walls before and pressure washing walls, getting them prepped for paint. We've moved it over to the artist's responsibilities to prime the walls now, and built that into their artist stipend. So say a wall's a little smaller, but they have to prime it. That's already kind of worked into the price that's going to be done by them. So that kind of answers that question, I hope.
Awesome. Thank you. No, I think that's really helpful. So we're at 10:43 right now. Savannah, I know that we've got lots of questions. So why don't we leave it to you to sort of facilitate what those are?
Sure. Thank you, Kim. Just gonna stop the screen share here. So there's some questions that came in from the chat, and some from Q&A. So I'm just gonna kind of start where I saw come in first. So we have a question. I think this is more directed towards Lauren, but feel free to chime in, anyone that wants to answer. You noted what Bridgeport invested in the creative economy. Do you have any data for the ROI?
Yeah, so meaning we have the value of the amounts invested per artist. And then we have the data, as I mentioned, this was coming out of the COVID era, the data around the increase in value of properties on the grand list from the last reval to the most recent one. And that's a more tenuous connection, I would say, but also the attendance at our mural walks, the amount of feedback that we received through our word of mouth and social media and newsletters, and feedback from the businesses. So it's a lot of qualitative data, but we had talked about, and if you all are planning ahead on public art programs, we had talked about collaborating with either Fairfield U or Sacred Heart University, or even University of Bridgeport, on a economic impact study. It didn't quite come together, but that would have been a good pre-post opportunity to explore. So I encourage you all to do such a thing if you have a local university you can partner up with.
Definitely. And just an advance plug, which Savannah's going to do anyways at the end of this, but next Tuesday, a week from today, webinar part 2 will really focus on storytelling, leveraging outcomes and impact. So, and that will be both Bridgeport, Lauren will be with us for that, and Norwich, their public mural program. So tune in for that one. Savannah, back to you.
Thanks. And I love the idea of partnering with the university. So hopefully that comes into fruition someday. Our next question is targeted towards JPO. Do you have a basic project management guide or checklist? Perhaps that you'd be willing to share, or even if you're not, could you talk about the process?
Yeah, pretty much the checklist is measuring the wall, identifying any issues with the wall, say the paint is chipping off down to the bare concrete or brick, understanding if it needs any type of pre-work done to it. Obviously, like I just said, measuring, and then talking with the artist, understanding the materials that the artist primarily uses, whether it's bucket paint or spray paint. That's something that we didn't touch on, Jonathan, is that we do have an account with Sherwin-Williams, but there are a lot of muralists that do use spray paint as a primary medium. So we do build that into the contract, that we do reimburse up to $2,500 for the projects that we would pay out of that same fund that Jonathan was talking about earlier. So yeah, the checklist it depends on the job. Again, I think understanding what the artist needs, whether it's rollers, how much primers needed, that's all just kind of you get used to that as the more projects you do.
I think there's
And
some other aspects that John's probably not giving himself credit for looking through too. Then that's like simple things like, is there a bathroom nearby? Is the property owner willing to let them inside? Is there somewhere where they can get water? Is there adequate lighting? So like, I think a lot of that's just kind of intuitive for him, but I know that that's something that we've discussed in certain sites. Is, how is this going to play out? What is it that they need on a personal level to be able to do the project?
yeah, sorry.
Great points.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, we'll keep it moving. Do you have to account for local ordinances about advertising on buildings? Like the coffee mural, was approval needed from the town or the city?
So we have a kind of mural guideline that breaks down what would be allowed. Anything that's happening through the program, would the approval process typically is my department. So the Office of Planning and Economic Development would kind of give the thumbs up, and we have for privately funded murals on private property. I think that the way we operate is probably pretty similar to the way DOT has their general Euro guidelines, and that anything that's coming through us can't be specifically marketing or advertising for the company. So I think the mural um, at Sound Coffee was, obviously related to what they do, but it wasn't assigned for them. And I think that's rung true with kind of anything that we do. Sometimes we'll do something that's somewhat related to what's happening inside the building, but it won't be assigned for them. And we make clear to the property owners. We've been asked, but that's not something we are going to use public money on. They're free to do it on their own, but that's not something that we'll do.
Thank you, Jonathan. Our next, it's more of, I'll make it into a question and a comment, but we had a question about, are you currently running scheduled tours or would you be open to private tours of the murals in Bridgeport? And Lauren kindly commented back that anyone is welcome to join them on November 8th for a murals walk. And she did drop the link in the chat. Lauren, do you want to touch anything else on that?
Sure, thank you. So that's part of our Bridgeport Art Trail, annual Bridgeport Art Trail Open Studios weekend. We host a neighborhood walk each year. And so Bridgeport Art Trail weekend, I'll put that link in the chat in just a minute, goes from Thursday, November 6th through Sunday, November 11th, right? No, 10th, sorry, 9th. Wow, numbers are hard. That weekend, Veterans Day weekend, every year is the Bridgeport Art Trail, and it's a citywide activation of art spaces, open studios, parties, activities. And so please join us on Saturday from 2 to 5. We'll be doing, in addition to the murals walk, also a reception at our office, which was recently refreshed and features a bunch of local artists' art on the walls. But I'll drop in the chat the Art Trail website, and you can see the many, many, many activities you can enjoy in the neighborhood that weekend.
Thank you, Lauren. That sounds really fun.
Can I add something real
Go
quick?
ahead.
Sorry. So just to go a little bit farther, the first 2 years we worked only in downtown with Lauren, but the past 2 years, this year and last year, we have expanded outside. We still are doing projects downtown with Lauren, like she said, but our goal was to start bringing all of the different neighborhoods of Bridgeport together through art. And that is while we're doing our scouting tours, figuring out, okay, well, this area is not getting enough love, so let's try to find a spot there. And that's a focus that we have. We're trying to pretty much link the city through art. And that is a goal that we really focus on for sure.
I love that. I'm just going to jump in right now. I'm envisioning in some of our new cultural districts and many of our many main streets across Connecticut, the idea of the scouting tours is awesome. If you're not sure where to get started. And I think I can totally envision in some towns that are just digging into this, it's sort of somebody from the municipality and somebody from the private sector who's involved either in their Main Street or their cultural district program, or just a community member that's really passionate about this, just doing a scouting tour like once or twice a year, I think that's a great way to start thinking about it.
And keeping in mind the texture of the wall, that's another tip for anybody listen, for everybody listening. Understanding the texture of the wall, understanding what type of work. If say there's a beautiful location, but the texture is pretty rough, that should limit the style of artwork that you want to put on that building. Like there was a mural we did downtown a couple years ago, and we really had to push the owners in a more abstract direction because the texture of the wall was really rough, and like a real detailed, say a portrait or, lettering probably wouldn't look as good on that mural and not really communicate well. So, just keep that in mind also, understanding the wall and what type of work would work best for that. If it's a wall that's majority seen from the highway or a busy road, you don't want to put too much detail on that because you're distracting people from driving. And again, people are seeing it from far away and it won't be as impactful.
Thank you. Is there any advice about working with historic buildings? Usually they are town-owned.
I'll just jump in here now and we'll provide this. I have a whole resources document with links, but then this will be a standalone separate document. I did ask our colleagues in the SHPO's office that I sit right next to, the State Historic Preservation Office, from SHPO's standpoint, sort of guidelines, things to think about. There's nothing formal per se with regard to public murals, but there are some helpful advice on what SHPO is thinking about.
Thank you. How do the issues discussed relate to publicly owned spaces, state or municipality? I think that even ties into a little bit of what you just said.
I'll jump in quickly. I think, one of the things with Laura in year one, we focused on kind of what we call vertical spaces, more traditional murals, and then we looked at kind of what we call horizontal. And I think JPO alluded to this a little bit too. And so we looked at basically anything that anyone would throw at us. We learned a lot and recognized that sculptures and other things like that are a lot more complicated to execute. And that's probably why we primarily focus on murals. But I think like for us, one of the things when you're dealing with private property owners, it's a lot easier to kind of move the conversation. And we know that we're ultimately deferring to the property owner. It's their property, so it's got to be a joint decision. When we were looking at sites that were either publicly owned or under public control, um, we convened a group of stakeholders from the downtown, from different departments, from the DSSD. Obviously, Lauren was part of that. So that made sure that whatever we were trying to do, as long as we had the authority to make the decision, we were farming it out to making sure that it wasn't just one of us making that call. And so, creating kind of an advisory committee. And some of that might be easier in a place where you have a cultural district that has a board or a commission that you're working with, whereas we didn't at the time. And so we convened this group and created kind of an advisory committee on public property to help make decisions.
Thank you, Jonathan. This question might be for you as well, or JPO. Is there a budget for sustainability of murals as they age and get weathered or start to deteriorate?
I don't think we have enough empirical kind of data to go on to truly understand what it's going to come down to or what we should expect. I think generally, um, we maintain like the Sherwin-Williams account, things like that, and the ability to go out and get additional materials if needed. We've had, I think, one, thankfully, it hasn't been more kind of vandalism, but I think the property owner handled it on their own. And so it's not something we've dealt with a lot, again, knock on wood, but we recognize at least keeping um, in communication with the artists so that we can potentially contract them to fix anything if necessary. Um, but it also helps when you start to kind of keep track of what colors you use and things like that, just in case you end up needing it.
And
I'm just gonna
and
add, oh,
making
sorry.
sure to oh, go ahead. Sorry,
Yeah,
Lauren.
yeah, I was just gonna add, like, if you are making the case for a mural program or a public art program in your town or city, I would just think too about the cost savings. Like, if you have a problem with graffiti, as we did before this mural program, pretty significant graffiti problem, this really deters, people are very respectful of the artwork, and the installations, having now almost 40 pieces of public artwork in the downtown, we have had one tag on one piece, and it was very easily fixed. So I would say the amount of time our ambassador team spent removing graffiti and repairing, boring gray walls, is now largely cut back. So there's a cost savings component I think you can emphasize if you're ever pitching your case to a stakeholder group.
Yeah. And I think the only time was probably I believe it was a younger person that did the tagging or the vandalism. So just and then just to add more to that answer is we use Sherwin-Williams, the highest grade paint. The paint is the color is going to last a very long time. That's why we made sure to use that. We're not just going to a low end paint. That's something to keep in mind. And if the paint is starting to fade, maybe it's time to either do a new mural at that point. But I'm talking years and years and years down the road. Maybe it's a different business altogether, and the mural doesn't really work there anymore. So
Yeah. So the flexibility
yeah.
and flexible thinking. Great. Thank you.
And
Great.
that's why we don't use a vandal coat on the majority, if not all of the murals that we've done. A clear coat that they call like a vandal coating that they usually put on murals works really well, but it also hinders the possibility of painting a new mural on that wall later on down the road. Just something to keep in mind.
Thank you. And this will be the last question that we take during the session. Um, does the mural design process ever involve community members, for example, along with the property owner, the people who would actually see the work on a daily basis?
I think, yeah. Um, generally we feel like we can get a sense of uh, a lot of times we've also held kind of in the same vein of the artist info sessions, the owner info sessions. JPO will meet with the various studio houses, and then we've also met with neighborhood groups. They've helped us understand kind of what they would like to see, and that can shape some of those decisions. And then sometimes it's also kind of a gut feeling. We've worked with some property owners, and we're at a point where they're like something, but we don't think it's going to go over well. So we'll pull in, some of the NRZ leadership or some of the committees and say, hey, listen, we're looking at this thing. We're, getting closer to pulling the trigger on it. What are your thoughts? Is there anything we should change? Should we start over? Just because, we want to make sure that everything continues to be received well and that people appreciate what they're seeing on a regular basis.
Okay, well, as promised, that was the last question. I know we're kind of running shortly over our hour. Is there any final thoughts or reflections the speakers would like to leave with the audience today?
Get some walls painted. We're here to help. I mean, our information is online somewhere. I'm sure you can find it. Anything that we can do to help get more art on walls in the state of Connecticut. I mean, Bridgeport's my hometown. I live in Milford now, but it's so great to be able to do that for my hometown. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that want to do the same in their hometown and surroundings. So it's just really exciting to do this. So thank you, Savannah and Kim, for putting this together and having us.
Thank you.
Yes, it's been a sincere pleasure, and I learned a lot today. Lauren, were you going to go ahead and say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add that on our YouTube page, Colorful Bridgeport's YouTube page, there are interviews with both artists that are part of the Color It In program, and there are interviews with community stakeholders that give a lot of insights into community-driven creative processes. So those are great resources. And then I put my contact information in the chat in case anybody wants to ask more questions or just, share some ideas. Happy to talk that through. So.
Yeah, I think I'll just reiterate how important it is to have great partners, both in Lauren and DSSD, and then we have our kind of citywide program working through the Bridgeport Economic Development Corporation. So from the municipal level, it's just very, very important to have good partners. And then I think just don't be afraid to create precedent. I think a lot of these programs are going to be new, and this shouldn't create fear. If anything, this should be exciting.
Definitely. Okay, well, if that's it from our speakers today, I will close out just with a few final reminders, announcements, and remarks. Okay. So we do invite you to join the more than 80 communities around the state committed to improving their Main Street by becoming a member of Connecticut Main Street Center. As a member, you receive exclusive help and resources to support your downtown work. Please visit ctmainstreet.org to learn more. We do have another webinar coming up. It's part 2 of this series. It's going to be called Placemaking: The Essentials of Public Murals, just like today, but it's part 2. It's on storytelling, leveraging, and impact. That'll be next week, September 30th from 10 a.m. to 11. You can register now at ctmainstreet.org/events. Lastly, actually, I have one more thing, so it's not lastly. We invite you to register for our fall summit, The Power of Place, Placemaking Strategies for Downtowns and Main Streets, and that registration information is now available on the Connecticut Main Street Center website. It's happening on October 8th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Schubert Theater in New Haven, Connecticut. And lastly, we invite you to visit our website and learn more about the Main Street Accelerator program. Applications are now open for the 6-month leadership development program. It's designed to guide you through executing a downtown or Main Street project. 2 of our speakers today have participated in this program. So we do invite you to visit ctmainstreet.org, and you just go to the tab on the top of our website where it says what we do and scroll down to Main Street Accelerator. And once again, we thank our sponsors and program partners. When you exit this webinar, you should be prompted to complete an evaluation for this presentation. Please take a moment to share your thoughts as it helps shape our programming so it is most valuable to you. That concludes today's webinar. Have a great day.